Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we have the CaDA Suzuki Katana 2022. The model number is C59021W. There are 1,104 pieces in this set, which is officially licensed by Suzuki Motorcycles. The first thing that I'd like to do today is look at the interesting or unusual pieces that we find in bags number 1. We'll do the same at the start of bags number 2. And at the end, we'll look at the set as a whole, talk about whether it's a good model, whether it's a good Suzuki Katana, and whether you should buy that model. So here we go with the pieces from box number 1. First thing to note is stickers. Unlike the Mercedes AMG one, the set doesn't appear to contain any prints. Everything has been handled by stickers. So I see a license plate, a speedometer, a headlight, the fuel tank, some fairing cowls. They'll all be covered with stickers. Here we have then some more pieces. I won't be talking about recolors compared to Lego because it's just not really very interesting. Instead, we'll talk about parts that are functionally or different in form to an interesting degree. First, we have the tires here. These have a nice print on them, but also like other CaDA tires, they have a nice kind of soft rubber. I do actually like to build remote control motorcycles as well, so I may use these for that. They feel like they would have good grip. One problem that I note straight away is that on the real motorcycle, you get a 120mm front tire and a 190mm wide back tire. Here we have two tires which are the same size. So in the end, not sure which one's going to be in correct proportion. Looking at the box art, it looks like the front one, but I think the rear one's going to look about 50% narrower than it should. Here we have the CaDA specialty kind of alternating hole beams. We have these in Lego nowadays too, but here we have a 4, a 5, a 7, a 9, and 11. As far as I know, Lego has 7 and 11, but not the other sizes. We have here a regular cross block with an axle hole one side and a pinhole the other side. CaDA did kind of redesign, restyle those, probably as a patent reason. But CaDA also has these cross blocks which have a pinhole on each side, which will allow different, potentially stronger constructions. We have a 2L lift arm with cross holes on both sides, but this one's a full lift arm thick. It's not the normal thin one that you're used to seeing. We have a cam here just to see the axle hole positions, and we have a lift arm which has the same axle hole positions. I'm sure we've all wanted that half distance axle hole at some point when we were building our own creations. We have the CaDA special new cowls, wing fairings. So these go together with a base, which has those half distance axle holes. We saw these in the AMG one already and some other previous sets. They give you some great new mounting options. And they go together with this type of fairing, which is more rounded than the usual ones we're used to. And also this type of fairing, again, is more rounded than we're used to. And you also have that option to put it this way round instead of the more usual this way round, so that these holes don't have to be at 90 degrees compared to the other ones. We have, of course, some what you would normally call 20 and 21 panels, but these ones are rounded. They give a different look. For CaDA, it's L16 and R15, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. We have these motorcycle wheels now. These actually look reasonably close to the Suzuki Katana wheels in real life, which have 3 pairs of 2 spokes and are in very much this color. So that's nice. It would be nice to see licensed wheels, but then this is a smaller set and perhaps that might be a bit too much to wish for. We have discs, brake discs. You'll recognize these from some Lego sets, but these have a kind of metallic finish on them. So that's going to look real nice on display. I'm not sure yet whether they've been painted or whether they're made of a metallic silver color. Maybe I'll try and scratch them later and see what comes up. We have this guy, which is a 2L lift arm, but with pins hanging out the side. This is going to enable a lot of very interesting kind of constructions, and really strong too. We've seen these before in some other CaDA sets. So far I've only found one, but here is a 4-stud, 4-unit long pin. Very useful. I'm sure we've all wished that these were available many times before. I did say I wasn't going to talk about recolors, but this fairing in trans red is, I think, quite an interesting piece, so I thought I'd show it to you. Now, I don't build much in studded bricks, but this is a kind of sloped tile that's 4 long on one edge, 2 long on the other edge, and it's 2 plates high. I don't know if this is a normal looking piece to anybody out there who builds with bricks more often, but I think it's going to be used on the seat cowl of the Suzuki Katana, and it's just an interesting piece I thought I'd show you. Here we have these 3x2 thin and thick lift arms. These are used on the AMG one. They're mostly used to replace the 3x3 T lift arm, but they can also be used for other constructions. For example, like this, I think there's one in the AMG one's door hinge. Of course, the other way around, or any other orientation that you want to put them in, or just as a thin lift arm with a pinhole based off the bottom. Quite an interesting piece, which is originally just to get around a patent problem, but does then bring in some other new options. So I'm now going to put together bags number 1, and then we'll look again. So here in step A27, you can see that the elastic band here, which transfers power from the drive into the fake motor, is very close to this 20-tooth bevel gear. If we look in the real model, you can see that in fact it touches. I don't know why this has been done in this way, because it's not necessary. We can change that 20-tooth gear for a 12-tooth gear, put this half bush on the other side of this 20-tooth gear, and it will stop the rubber band from making contact, and it will also mean that the fake motor spins a little bit faster, which from my pushing it around on the table it seems to need. I'll apply that fix and I'll be back in just a moment. The fix is completed. You can just see the black 12-tooth bevel gear in front of the red 16-tooth gear. There is a lot of space now between it and the rubber band, and the piston engine moves faster than before. There is a little bit more resistance because you are turning it now quite quickly, but it's nice when you push it along the table and it goes clack, clack, clack. So the fix for that one is in step A12. Instead of using the 20-tooth gear from the set, use a 12-tooth gear from your own supply. A13. In step A13, we add the second gear shaft to the gearbox, but it comes with a little problem. So here it is, and you could see that when this gear spins, it's clicking just a little bit, and there's no load on it yet, so it can't be the teeth skipping for being overloaded. What's happening is that when compared to a regular bush, the redesigned CaDA bush, a couple of points on its rotation is slightly thicker. It's kind of hard to see. Try and line it up to the camera. But there's a couple of points on the rotation where the octagonal CaDA bush is just slightly thicker. And what it's doing is that gear is touching the bush, causing it to stop. To fix that, in step A3, you'll need to use a regular grey Lego bush here. Back in a bit. Here with the Lego bush, there is clearance to the gear and everything moves smoothly. Is this piece here, which stops the stand from swinging further back, is attached already in section A30. using this axle through here with a half bush on the bottom. If you do it like that, the half bush is only just barely on the axle and it will fall down pretty much every time that you use the stand. Instead, use one of the dark grey pins with axles and put the half bush on the top. As you can just about see that it is there, and that's not going to fall off, and it's going to keep in rear suspension. The rear swing arm extends well below what I would consider that it needs to. You can see it moving. This is where the exhaust will attach. This is the swinging arm. And what can happen is that they can catch against one another. Now, when it's all completed, if you push on the seat on this side, it's going to be fine. And if you push on this side, it's going to catch every time. So I think I see a fix, which is that in step A51, instead of this construction, what you'll do is take this one, this one, and this one. And instead of the 4x2 lift arms, use 3x3 lift arms. Put them on like so. And that's going to stop it hanging down the extra 2 studs, which is where it's catching. I'm going to apply the fix and be back in just a moment. The fix has been applied. The swing arm no longer hangs down below where it needs to, and it cannot hit the exhaust holder. This has the added benefit that some of this play in the suspension has been removed. There's still some there, but there was more before applying the fix. So, on to the next set of bags number 2. Oh, before we do, there is one more thing that's not really a bug. It doesn't affect the function. But this rear wheel has 2 brake discs on it. I don't believe there's ever been a motorcycle with 2 rear brake discs on it. So it would be very easy to change that for a whole bush if you want to. So inputting the stickers on, I've noticed that the turn signals don't want to stay square and the brake light does not want to stay square. So there's a simple fix for this, which is that in step A35, we're not going to use a pinhole connector with an axle pin to hold the brake light on. We're going to do this instead. And then it's only going to move in the one direction, which it needs to set the angle correctly anyway. And then in step A58, we're not going to use a bush pin with a 4-axle and the cross block in this orientation, again with an axle pin over here. Instead, we're going to do this with a bush pin, an axle pin, the cross block the other way around, and a 2-stud axle, which is going to have to come from your stash. This pin hub connector is also going to have to come from your stash, but the rest of the parts can come from the set. So I'll be back in just a moment with those fixes in place. Okay, fixes applied, and we can see that the turn signals now do not want to rotate. Still moves up and down, but I think that's fine, and the pins have enough friction that they're not trying to just do it on their own. And the brake light as well doesn't want to rotate anymore. Just moves up and down a little bit. Again, I think it's okay. So beginning with bags number 2, there are some more interesting or unusual pieces in the set. We have 3 and 6 unit alternating hole lift arms, just to round off the set that we saw in bags number 1. This piece is very much like a piece that we should all recognize, but it has the axle connectors top and bottom. This is a part which CaDA has been forced to make due to potential patent issues, but it does offer some very interesting extra connections that you don't get with the regular piece. This is a pin hub with 3 axles instead of the usual 2. This replaces the regular 90-degree pin hub, which again CaDA has had to do due to potential patent infringements. The motorcycle fork, suspension fork, is quite similar to the Lego Ducati fork, but it has this extra axle hole which can then be used to mount a brake caliper, perhaps some kind of mudguard depending on what you're building. I would also say the spring is just a little bit stiffer than the Lego spring, and the whole thing is just a bit less bendy, which has to be good because on the Lego Ducati fork it's really quite bendy. This is another wing panel. This one is supplied without the base. In this context, it's not going to be necessary. Just shows a bit more of the versatility of these new CaDA panels as compared to what we're used to. This kind of represents the old Bionicle fairings. It's a bit redesigned from the ones that we're used to. I've not seen these in a CaDA set before. It's unusual to get a kind of obsolete piece recreated in that way, but it's interesting and it's nice to see it. These flat panels are very similar to the usual ones, but they have a cutout on each side. Again, this is a thing that's been forced on CaDA due to potential patent infringements, but it does allow some interesting options because instead of only putting a 7 long lift arm in this hole and exactly replicating the usual panel, you could also put an alternating hole lift arm in there. And then you have something that's quite interesting and can be used much more like a frame. But even compared to a frame, it's more interesting because you could realign the holes. You could have the 2 up holes next to each other, or you could have the 2 up holes at 3 spacing like we're used to. So it's another interesting piece. This is usually used as a leaf spring. It's been used on a military truck as a leaf spring. Very interesting part. And try and hold it square to the camera, and you can see that it flexes really like the piece, the real thing that it's supposed to be. Each of the leaves of the leaf spring move separately, allowing the whole thing to move. But because of how it is 3 leaves, it doesn't really want to twist. I'm putting quite a lot of force, not much more than a regular lift arm could be twisted in the same way. Here it's being used as a radiator. And these are the cheap pieces of this set. These are special parts just for the Suzuki Katana. They represent the front fairing. They're held on by an axle front and rear on each one. And yeah, just like on the AMG 1 where we had the aero pieces, we had the special wheels, and they really brought the final look to the set. Here we have a specific fairing that you just couldn't replicate with individual fairing cowls. So I will begin to build bags number 2 and come back if I have anything interesting, any bug fixes. Other than that, we'll see you at the end for a little review and a little rundown. Bye for now. The build is finished. Here it is, the CaDA Suzuki Katana in all its glory, with its entire workshop diorama and everything going on. Keeping in mind that the bike does have a working side stand, you also get a working rear stand, this whole shop floor, and a working stand for the front wheel as well. I think if we compare it to this one here, we can all agree that CaDA is winning on stands. So well done CaDA for that. Let's talk about first the pieces. With the CaDA AMG 1, they had already stepped up their parts quality significantly. That was already a pleasure to build. I think the only piece that I mentioned being not quite perfect was the 5-stud axle with stop. It was a little bit too high on friction. In this case, they seem to have changed the mold for that because it doesn't have that problem anymore. The pieces really are just like building with Lego, but you get all those extra alternating beams, you get 4-stud long pins, you get lots of other interesting things Like, for example, the cheap pieces, these front fairings, front cowls, but I think they're really good. I think they make the build, and they're a really good replica to the original bike. So what about the building experience? It's 1,100 pieces. Quite a few of them are in the stand. The instructions are really good. They don't let you make any mistakes. They're not quite like the Master Series instructions. They have the previous sections grayed out. It's something to get used to if you're not used to that, but I find it quite comfortable after the first few steps. The bike does have some problems though, and I'm coming at this from the angle of being a motorcycle fan myself. This bike in real life has an inline 4-cylinder engine, and you can see that on the exhaust pipes, CaDA did fit fake exhaust pipes to kind of give that impression. But underneath all of the fairings, there is a V4, which just simply doesn't belong on this bike. Maybe that won't bother you, but as a bike aficionado, it does bother me. The real bike should have a 120mm wide front tire and 190mm wide back tire, so the back tire should be about 60% wider than the front. In this case, they're not different at all. They are identical tire treads, and it's not going to be possible because of the construction of the swinging arm and where this fairing panel is. It's not going to be possible to put a thicker tire on, even if you have one spare. There are various problems in the construction that we've looked at as we went through. Admittedly, with a handful of 5-cent parts, you can fix that, and they're common parts that everybody's going to have in their spares that's built anything before. It's not a huge problem, but it is annoying. It's the kind of thing that I would hope that they might do a revised second edition and perhaps include those fixes. There are some really cool parts, the fairings, the windscreen is better than the Lego one. The leaf springs being used as a radiator, all those 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 and 11 stud long alternating beams, very cool. I am a big fan of the CaDA fairing panels. You can't make this kind of construction with regular Lego fairing panels, and even if you could somehow make it, it would have that kind of weird sharp arrowhead at the end, which wouldn't belong in this model. So all in all, what are we going to say about this bike? Is it good? It's a good model. It's a good build. The pieces are good. Is it a good replica of a Suzuki Katana? It looks like one, but that V4 engine really gets me. So who's it for? It's for somebody who likes building with CaDA. It's for somebody who likes building brick motorbikes and perhaps just isn't as bothered about the engine configuration. It all works, by the way. The suspension has a really nice kind of spring to it. The front, though, is... So I measured the front rake angle is 37 degrees. The real bike is 35 degrees. To put that in context, the Harley Fatboy has a 31-degree rake angle. So this is as much more shallow in the forks compared to a Fatboy as a Fatboy is compared to the real bike. But if you hold it still and press it in, the forks have a good amount of spring to them. The engine clacks pretty good. There's not any kind of excessive resistance in there. So all the functions work once we've done our couple of fixes. If you didn't do those couple of fixes, then you are going to be disappointed. So yeah, who should buy this? Who should build this? Just somebody who's got a collection of brick motorbikes already, but isn't necessarily worried about the technical details of the bike. It does look nice, and the fairing, especially with the windscreen, it's officially licensed. The stickers go on pretty well. Some of the stickers on the fuel tank and on the front cowl are on a transparent background. I recommend you use tweezers for those so you don't get fingerprints underneath them. Yeah, went together well. Everything functions with those fixes. I think I'll do a PDF sheet for the fixes so that in case you want to buy this and build it for yourself, you will have those fixes and you will know which extra pieces you need. CaDA doesn't document the spare parts that they supply, so I'll tell you which spare parts I used from the set, but it'll be up to you whether you have those in your set or whether you need to supply them from your own supplies. yeah, if you do want to buy it, then please use my affiliate link. You'll get 5% off, and I'll get a little bonus as well that I can use to buy more bricks in future and bring you more of these videos. Thank you for watching.